Welcome to the Tao of Sports podcast with Troy Kirby, covering sports business with over 300 industry leaders from across the globe. Now, here is your host, Troy Kirby.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Sports podcast. I'm Troy Kirby, along with episode 347 of the podcast. Now, today's guest is Russell Scabetti. Now, he is the VP at Core Software. They work a lot with CRM, data analytics, and of course, Russell has a big background in data analytics, especially from his time at the New York Jets previous to that. Now, he also runs a blog. It's called thebusinessofsports.com. You know, Russell Scabetti has been a huge influence, not only to me, but a lot of people in this industry. He's really helped expand a lot of the networking and a lot of the capability of what we understand about sports business. I can't say it enough. It's really been an oversight on my behalf not to have him on before 346 other episodes, but it was something that I didn't even really register about. And then he contacted me, said, "Hey, I'd like to do one. If you're interested." I was like, "Sure, let's go do it." And immediately we kind of clicked over the phone. I think it was a great conversation. I think you'll enjoy it as well as a lot of the things that we talk about within this industry have really expanded to the point to where we're really, I feel, getting the conversation going on the data-driven solution. That is, how do we understand data? How does small data work to build big data? And exactly what can we do to build more revenue? That can't be said enough, and I think Russell Scabetti does a great job of talking about some of the issues that are out there. Great stuff on episode 347 of the Tao of Sports.
Want to spread the word about the Tao of Sports podcast? Please like an episode and share it on your Facebook or Twitter. You can even rate and review the podcast in iTunes, which helps us gain new fans by moving up in the iTunes rankings. Some sports executives are also sending the link to the podcast to their coworkers for a listen. Every little bit helps, and the Tao of Sports podcast thanks you for your efforts.
Russell, thanks very much for coming on the podcast. The world of CRM is something that would seem so logical to the world of sports, but yet in the last few years is the only time that it's really been adopted cohesively. I would think that every sports team would have wanted to know who their fans were because they're so loyal or they're so adaptive to that type of arena, so to speak. It's been something that you've kind of been a hallmark of, really trying to see what CRM can do for sports teams, correct?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is definitely something that's emerged and grown tremendously over the last few years. And I think it's just another example of how the sports industry and the business side of it has had to get more refined than it used to be. You know, traditionally, sports teams, sports brands, during the boom, teams didn't have to worry about selling out or tickets, and ticketing tends to be the biggest driver, at least initially on the CRM side of things. So as long as the teams are selling out and renewals were 95% plus, it was looked at more of an expense and why do we need this than thinking about how it fits into long-term vision. Now, as the economy kind of shifted in the 2005 to 2010 range, and it wasn't as much of a guarantee that the tickets were just going to move, and the secondary market was, impacting pricing. Teams needed to get smarter about it, and that's where you finally found teams buying into the value that CRM was going to bring in terms of needing that deeper information about your prospects and your customers, and using that information to drive more targeted campaigns, to drive more efforts around retention, and that's why you've seen this increased focus on the area recently.
And then when you see a sales floor, it's completely changed, because before it used to be a sales floor would just be 40 guys using lists. They'd be pounding out 100 phone calls a day. They'd probably hit the same people over and over again within a 3-month, 1 year period. And now they're being more analytical to it. They still got a ways to go, but more analytical towards the idea of we've got to make sure we actually know who we're calling and why we're calling, rather than just calling everybody.
Absolutely. It's about, I don't want to say it's about working smarter rather than working harder, because it's definitely both. You still got to work plenty hard. But if you can work smarter, you just can drive so many more efficiencies. And it's great when you can see the sales teams buy into that. You're still going to have, you still can do the math of what your conversion rates are and how many calls you're going to have to make. But if you can put the tools in front of your sales team to make them better sellers, the adoption rate for CRM CRM jumps dramatically. You see better performance out of your staff and out of your campaigns. That was something I was always really a big believer in when I train people around CRM, is it's not about just showing people how to use the system and how to log calls. That's the concern, right? Is this big brother? Is this, I have to do this just to show you that I'm making my 100 calls a day? Can't you just look at the phone logs? But when you can sit down with a sales team and show them, no, it's not just about that. It's about, look at the number of people you're going to call over this week and this month, and how many calls it typically takes to close a sale, and how are you going to remember all this information? You know, you might think you remember who all your hot leads are, but the truth is it's really complicated. And if I can put the best leads in front of you and I can show you those key data points, that's going to help you resonate with that person while you're on the phone with them. It's just going to make your sales numbers jump dramatically. It's going to make the organization perform better. So when you see that buy-in at the staff level, it really makes a difference in terms of the group's overall performance.
So when we're really creating the CRM model that we want to use, how do you really create the customer profile in the right way? Everyone talks about big data, but a lot of times they forget about small data, which is really compiling the information to know who Russell is before I'm going to call him. What's the information that I want, and what's really extraneous information that's really not going to do me any good to even collect?
No, I'm glad you used the term small data, because everyone is obsessed with big data, and the problem is they try to jump right into these big data conversations without realizing there's so many small wins that they can, build off of right in front of them today. Now, ticketing data is still going to be first and foremost the best indicator of future purchase decisions. So it's not just about having that ticketing data, it's about presenting it to your staff and managing it in an easy to digest way. The truth is, especially when you're talking about teams that have 40 and 80 home games a year and how many different types of purchases, and whether it's the primary purchase or a lot of teams get data about the secondary market, there is just this wealth of ticketing information that can be overwhelming if you don't know how to work, how to use it. You don't just want to give every single game buyer to your customers all at once. You want to kind of put it in context. So let's start with the people that showed repeat purchases year over year, or have purchases of a certain level, of a certain lifetime value that we still haven't converted into bigger packages. So using the ticketing data the right way is the easiest win out of the gate. But then you start combining that with the data that you get from just conversations with your staff. It's about setting them up with collecting data in a structured fashion that they can use. So it's learning about who they come to the game with, who their favorite players are, little details on their favorite memories. Those little pieces of information combined with the ticket history lets you get a lot more personal. But and also why they may not buy, what their objection is. The truth is, when you on a sales call, one of the first things you tend to find out is what their objections are, whether it's price, whether it's time, or whatever. And if you collect that information in a really structured fashion, and then the situations ever change, if they're unhappy with the team direction, but then the team has a great draft or signs some great players, having that information to be able to revisit the people and overcome those objections is really important. So those are just some really basic data points, and then you can take that and build off of it. One of the things that I see a lot of successes is you start with your ticketing data, and then you start collecting demographic data too, and you can buy a lot of that information through third parties and build these great models. So you look at your existing customers and their ticketing and the demographics, and then you bring in your prospects and you compare them to your customers. And it really just lets you prioritize for people that maybe don't have as much ticketing history, other things that jump out at them that make them look more like your target customer.
And then we also have relationship data, which is something that's off to the side, because it used to be that every salesperson would just go, well, who do you know? And now we know that even before we meet with that initial customer, who they really know, who can help us not only build off of this one sale, but also have the relationship to build off of the second sale.
Absolutely, and I think you see the most success there when you start getting into the bigger conversations, especially around premium and sponsorships. I've seen a lot more teams embrace LinkedIn. And if you are, for example, a premium subscriber through LinkedIn, that opens up the ability to integrate them directly into your CRM, so you can see your relationships with them easier. You open up the doors to what other relationships you could have conversations with, and it adds a tremendous amount of power to your existing CRM, because you're always going to collect your own data, put in your own contacts, the little things that you learn about them. But to really let that be the gateway into those deeper relationships and introductions from one person to another person, and finding out those things you have in common to let you get that conversation, because that's half the battle, is just getting to have the conversation. It really opens up the opportunity.
So do you think phone calls are going away, or do you think they're going to be strengthened by the idea of CRM?
I think it's going to be strengthened. Phone calls are never really going to go away, especially when you're talking about the level of purchase that we want people to make. At the smaller level, when you're buying single game tickets or small packages, you're definitely seeing much more of a shift for that to be an online transaction where the customer is doing their own research, and if they need to know more, they reach out to you. And we're going to call you and we're going to tell you information about it, but a lot of those purchases are still happening online without a conversation because the customer has a lot more control, and it's a smaller purchase. But when you're dealing with season ticket packages and premium purchases, there's still a lot of a sales component that goes into that. And the phone is the best way to have that conversation that generates an actual close of a purchase. Now, the important thing, though, is even if the phone is going to be the best way to close the purchase, you need to be flexible in the different channels you use to have those preliminary conversations. I see a lot of use of web chat because the truth is people want to ask questions without you knowing who they are first. So that's a very important channel to let you communicate important sales information to prospects. Email is never going away, both just from general marketing purposes as well as for one-to-one conversations. And then social media is important. It's important for brands to be monitoring social media, to be able to be engaging and responding to the questions that people have. But the truth is, to get that to a sale event, you're going to want to try to drive that conversation to email or to a phone call, because that's where you're going to see the most success.
Have you seen any difficulty with the implementation of CRM for a team? I mean, the idea that maybe an executive is that old school executive who goes, is that really what we need? Or are a lot of people embracing it now?
A lot more are embracing it. Those conversations are a lot easier than they used to be, but there's still organizations that are, I would say, a little more old-fashioned that still feel they might not need it, or they they look at it more of a cost. Because the truth is, it's kind of hard to show true ROI on CRM. Not that it doesn't exist, but the question you always get back is, well, how do you know we wouldn't have sold that person anyway? The truth is, it's very hard to concretely show that, but it's just the scale at which we're operating with, and the need to be more efficient and to show, it just lets you get a lot more deeper into, well, what audiences are we selling, what audiences aren't we selling? Without it, you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants and dealing with Excel spreadsheets. And I mean, I still even know, I won't name them, the organizations that, still work off of paper sheets. The truth is, it takes some moment typically for an organization to realize that they need it, but the number of organizations that haven't bought in are fewer and far between now.
So now you've moved from transitioning really from a team to a vendor. Is that kind of a weird transition, or is that something that comes kind of naturally because you're able to know what the team needs from the vendor side now to be able to not only sell them more, but also ensure that you're hitting exactly what they're looking for?
That was a big reason behind the move. I honestly never thought I would move over to the vendor side. I loved, I spent the last 5 years working with the Jets, and before that I spent a year down in Philly with the Flyers primarily. And I loved being on the team side. And, it's definitely valuable for me here at Core now to have that experience and be able to think about that in terms of my role, which is a lot more around product strategy and how do we continue to shape how we customize and deliver these systems to meet the needs of the teams. The thing that really kind of opened my eyes to this opportunity was at the Jets, I felt very fortunate. The organization really did buy into CRM. When I walked in the door, they started making the investment into a system, and we really got it to a great place where it spanned consumer sales, premium sales, corporate sales, all of our service departments. It was tightly integrated to marketing. We had a really nice, robust system, and I worked with Core during that time because they were the partner we used. But what happened was, teams would come to me and say, hey, we'd love to know more about what you're doing. And I was having a lot of those conversations. Some of it was specific, demonstrations, but a lot of it was just fundamentals like, why do we do this? Why do we make the investment? Why are we doing things the way that we do? And so I loved those opportunities. I loved when a team would come visit, or I would get on the computer with them and show what we did and talk about why we did it. I would learn things that I could apply to the Jets, because sometimes you get so in the weeds that, I forgot about that. I meant to do that 6 months ago, and it lets me learn a lot more. Those conversations were so fun, and that's one of the unique things. The things I'm looking forward to most here is, we do have relationships with a lot of different teams. I think we're approaching 70 different teams that we work with on some CRM relationship or another. And I've already started having those conversations with customers and learning about what the different implementations are and finding ways that we can either improve our product or give more value back to the teams that we work with. And that part of it is really exciting to me.
So you worked at the Jets, and my question is, do we have like a misunderstanding of what the NFL does in terms of sales? Because we seem to not look at them the same way we would the NBA or Major League Baseball, as if they're transacting sales all the time. Is that really kind of a slur towards the NFL model, that they still are selling all the time? They just only have 8 games to do it.
Yeah, you've seen a little bit of it. You've seen some statistics come out where the sellout rate isn't quite the same as what it used to be. You saw the NFL change some of their blackout rules in the last 2 years, where teams could sell, they could change essentially the manifest and sell as they wanted to 85% or 90% of their tickets in order to not be blacked out. So I think it just took a little longer for the NFL to be affected. It did have a much larger percentage of season ticket holders compared to some of the other sports. And that is definitely dictated by the, only having 10 home games per year, the 8 regular and the 2 preseason. But it's just the same idea, is that it can't be taken for granted anymore. There is less overall market interest in season tickets. The secondary market has made it more possible for people to pick and choose the games that they want to go to without needing to have season ticket purchases. So then even if it requires a premium, they're willing to do it in order to have the flexibility. So NFL, a lot of teams do have more needs to sell tickets. So it's just an imperative to them, as it was to the NBA, to be smarter about it, to use CRM platforms, to have more insights about those customers, to try to drive better renewal rates, and just be smarter about how they go about selling those season tickets and mini plans. You've seen a lot more teams offer mini plans where historically they didn't need to.
The other thing is you guys moved into a new stadium during your tenure there. My question to that is, you're talking about a whole different fan. Even if you're talking about really the same fan, the pricing structure changes to the point to where in a new stadium, you may actually have to be going after somebody else for those same exact seats before, or you have a reseating issue. How do you really handle that from the CRM side?
That was actually probably the biggest imperative to allow the Jets, to push the Jets to make the investment in CRM, because in that massive move of 80,000 people from one venue to another, you have to get it right. You only have one chance to really do that. And so we were really, really focused on making sure we had as much information about the existing customers in the old building as possible to place them into the best seats, whether that was, clubs or PSLs or upper level, which didn't have PSLs, and really make that process as seamless as possible. It was based on a schedule. It was based on seniority. And so we really, divided the database into the right segments, distributed them out among the staff and really had those good conversations and moving them. And so a large percentage really did move from the old building to the new building. They were displaced in different areas, which is unfortunate. The truth is that when a team has a new venue like that, it's an opportunity to let your pricing match what the market bears. And the Jets, there were some different repricing along the way. Some things were maybe a little overpriced, and they adjusted. So it was about that opportunity that gave us the window to really get into CRM, start getting that data on our customers, and try to move as many of them as possible. And when that didn't happen, now we were empowered to go through our wait list and do prospecting and get more into what I would call traditional new business, something that the Jets up until 2008, 2009 never needed to do. And so if we did not have that platform and we were just going out there trying to, call off of an Excel list of our wait list and try to do prospecting here and there, it wouldn't have worked. So during that whole migration, we really focused also a lot of our efforts on lead generation, whether that was through sweepstakes, through, getting sign-up forms at the venue, at the old building during the last year or two, and get those prospects into the system. So once we finished moving people over based on seniority, we had a pipeline to work off of to start transitioning into that new business process. And there are a lot of new buyers in that building, but the nice thing is a lot of them are the customers that are from the old building as well that did decide to come over.
And so then you and I both have really a connection in the fact that we're both certifiably nuts because we also do industry blogs or podcasts. And I don't know if that keeps you up as much as the industry as it does me, but has that actually helped your acumen of the entire industry to kind of do this other thing to where it transitions to whether you're doing CRM or whatever for, a team or now as a vendor?
I love the fact that I've done this blog, even though, yes, it will keep me up at nights or I have to wake up early. And, it's essentially like having a second job, one that's an unpaid job. But it definitely keeps me tied into the industry. Even though my focus day-to-day at the Jets and Core has been very CRM focused, doing that and all the things that come along with it keep me very aware of everything else that's going on throughout the industry. It lets me find ways to contribute and give back. I've made tremendous relationships through that site, and those relationships could have impact in my personal business and professional. The networking events that the blog has spawned have been great, and I get tremendous feedback off of that. I'm just really passionate about the business, as it's very obvious that you are too. And as these tools, these opportunities have emerged to have blogs and be active on Twitter and be active on LinkedIn, it's very educational. I learn a ton, and I feel very fortunate to be in this business. And I went back to school, got my MBA to try to get into sports business. My original background was in pure traditional IT. And I just feel really lucky to be here. And so it's also an opportunity to give back and, it builds my brand and it's been a wonderful experience. I'm sure you've kind of experienced the same thing.
Oh, yeah. And, one of the things that I always thought was great was your hashtag SB night. And I've actually been to two of them that have been in San Francisco because it's closer to Sacramento. But the idea of that coming forward for those that don't understand, it really gathers. I mean, we had bars that are packed full of people that are just in sports business, but they're not schmoozing in the same way. They're just getting to know each other. And I thought that was great. What actually created that idea for you?
So going back, I guess 3 or 4 years now, probably 4 years, there was going to be a night where I was randomly going to be in the city for something, and I just had the idea, let me throw a blog post on my site and say, hey, who wants to go grab drinks tonight? And I had 7 other people show up. So there were 8 of us that were at the original business of sports networking event. And we chatted for a little while. It was really nice. One of them is Joshua Dubois, who helps me now co-run a lot of the New York events and helped a lot with SB Week. And we just said, this is fun. Why don't people do this more? I mean, there's clearly a market for conferences, but the thing that people love most about the conferences tend to be the opportunities to network and, just have great personal one-to-one conversations. But conferences are expensive and require travel. And so we're like, why don't we just try this again in a couple of months? And I gave it more notice and we sent it out again. And the next time we had like 40 people. And that was great. And then we did it again 3 months later and we had 80 people. And once we got through a couple of them, I had friends in other cities that said, hey, do you have any interest in coming out here and doing one? Now, I couldn't travel, but there's no reason why I couldn't promote the event and have friends in other cities help me find a bar, find a time, and just kind of start building out these little regional events. The response is great. Like to your point, it's very casual. It's just about career building, making good relationships with people, having good conversations, very low key. And it's just kind of built from there. And 2 years ago, we had the crazy idea, let's do all the cities on one night. And that was SB Night, the first one you mentioned. That was back in 2013. And it was great. We had 18 cities all have events on one night. And the problem we had there, even though it was a huge success and we had great response, there were some cities that couldn't participate because it happened to be a bad night. There was too many teams that had events that night. So this year, when we wanted to grow it even further, we made it SB Week, and we actually spanned every city. We could have the event in the best night for that location, not no conflicts with local teams, and we hit over 30 cities this year. And the nice thing is, if we're doing all this, we wanted to also make it for a good cause. So we made it a $5 donation to UNICEF and raised about $6,000 for UNICEF. So it's great. We help people come together. It's great relationship building. And if we can, put the time in and have it be for a good cause as well, I think everyone wins.
And I think that's great. I mean, you mentioned the part about the conferences. I do think one of the things that kind of worries me about conferences is they're expensive to the point to where new people don't get in, and therefore they have to seek out other information in order to build their knowledge. Otherwise, they're going to be kind of shut out, and then we're going to have people that are really kind of bad at what they do because they've never had the ability to educate. So that's where your blog comes in, or even if you want to say my podcast, but at the same time, I think that's probably a valuable step in why we have to do the things we do.
No, this is, I joke about it, but this is a golden age of sports business. I mean, take a look at Darren Ravel. You go back 10 years ago, was there a dedicated sports business reporter that had that type of profile? It would really take some massive story for the business side of the industry to get attention. But it's huge right now. You see sports management programs, you see Ravel's success, you see conferences upon conferences upon conferences. I mean, there is a huge interest level, and that in turn, there's so many young professionals who are out there trying to seek out information. And there's all different types of information. Some of it's great, some of it is not. But even without having the budget, without needing to spend money on memberships or admissions, there are so many great free resources that people in the industry are putting back out there that students and young professionals can take advantage of. Some of it is digital, some of it is in person, like the events. There's no reason, there's not a lack of opportunity for people who are really passionate about wanting to get into this side of the industry to learn and educate themselves and prepare themselves for that type of opportunity. Whether it's your podcast, my blog, Brian Gaynor's newsletters and website, Joe Favorito's newsletters, there's so many great ways to learn that it's really exciting when you think about it compared to a few years ago.
Oh, and then there's also the connection of Twitter. And I think a lot of people still don't take advantage of Twitter as much as they can, for whether you say it's the SB Week, SB Night type of hashtag, or just the hashtag discussions in general. I'm kind of curious of whether you think that that's really connected a lot more people than normal that would have normally kind of gone by the wayside.
Absolutely. To me, I love LinkedIn. Don't get me wrong, it's very important and it's part of my day. But Twitter by far is the most valuable tool because of the scale it operates at, how public it is, how you can really get these great conversations going, how you use hashtags to search out this great content. You don't have to be Googling and trying to figure things out. If you just follow a couple of key hashtags, the content's coming to you. The conversation is coming to you. So it's a great tool just to view and read. And once you start getting into that conversation, it opens up the opportunities tremendously. In particular, the Los Angeles networking event that we had this year, the person that I normally work with was unfortunately unavailable, and I mentioned I wasn't sure if LA was going to happen, and I had a couple people that I only knew through Twitter reach back out to me and said, hey, we can help, let me know. And having people that I've never met in person, we tweeted and direct messaged and eventually emailed a little bit, but we put on the LA event, and I had never met them before. And by all accounts, it was a great event. The opportunity to build relationships through Twitter is tremendous. So it's definitely something people should be taking advantage of. And the hashtags really help you focus on the right people and get into that community.
And I'm going to switch it around on you a little bit. Everyone talks about social media as being the scourge, but on like a Twitter or a Facebook or even a LinkedIn, doesn't it allow you the opportunity to understand what your brand is and how not to violate it and how not to say things in public that are going to get you in trouble or hurt you long term, in a way that it allows you to kind of understand what the game is by the time that you end up networking physically with somebody, you know how to react with those types of people?
No, absolutely. And when I talk to students about this, I'm making very clear that social media is a double-edged sword. So as powerful as it can be in a positive way, it only takes one or two missteps to completely negate that power and really put you in a bad spot. So you can definitely, I would say for people that are jumping into it, it's very valuable to kind of look and see what people are doing and what's working and what's not working. The same thing applies for brands. I mean, you see teams and leagues and brands using social listening technologies to see what is out there, to see what people are saying about their brand, what those conversations are. And try to gauge whether, if they're doing any campaigns, what the response, whether it's positive, whether it's negative. It gives you that instant feedback. You do have to be careful, though, because it is so instant that you can also overreact to it. So it's like I said, it's very powerful, but that power comes with a bit of a double-edged sword.
You're also on the board of Cosmo, and Cosmo is something that has been created recently, right? It's the Commission on Sports Management Accreditation. That's one of the questions I've always had is how come we can't accreditate? How come we can't make sure that everybody just can't have a sport management program with a PE star as the professor? What really has become kind of the reaction to that, and has it been something that some universities are not really in favor of, or what's really been going on?
So I've joined Cosmo about a year ago. I'm actually, and it was interesting, their board member had traditionally only been academics, but they wanted to add someone from industry to kind of make sure that all the things that they're talking about from an academic perspective in reviewing programs also apply for the students when they're out in the professional world. So it's been a very interesting experience for me to be a part of it. And in particular, I'm really enthusiastic about what they're trying to do. You hit the nail on the head in that there should be more opportunity for accreditation so that you can build trust in these programs. Like I mentioned earlier, with the passion coming around in sports business and the high profile of it, universities have to compete to draw in students. And seeing that application trend and the spike in people wanting to be in sports management, the logical thing for a university is, well, let's add a sports management major. The challenge is if they're not set up for it, students who don't know what to look for and just see a sports management major are going to flock to it. And I have questions where some of these programs are not properly training students for what's out there in the industry. So yes, Cosmo is new. And the goal of it is to get these sports management programs, undergraduate, graduate, and even doctoral, to go through the accreditation process, review their outcome assessment plans, review their strategic plans for the department, review curriculum, especially in the undergraduate level, to make sure that certain core requirements that every undergraduate program should be able to train their students on are being accounted for, reviewing faculty, qualifications and the ability to support the number of students in those programs. There's a lot that goes into it, which is the learning process for me. And the more that sports management degrees continue to pop up and the more competition there is, the more value that accreditation is going to have for those programs to tell those students, yes, we didn't just add a program to draw you. We have accredited this program. You're going to get the education you need. You're going to get set up for your career in the right way. So I'm really excited to be a part of that process. And I'm hoping that as things continue to go on, more and more schools get into and apply for accreditation, so we can really make sure that these students, these future sports business professionals, are getting prepared the right way.
And that's a key point when you say that career. And one of the problems that I've had with the sport management programs is there are some that are really duly focused on ensuring that kids who are working hard and who are getting the degree have an opportunity to get a job. But the problem is a lot of them feel like, well, you're just here for the education part of it, not the job afterwards. And that's where I think the kind of the falling point is if you don't give them the opportunity to go after both the career side, then their sport management degree is kind of worthless, right?
No, I agree completely, and that's the area that I'm probably focusing on the most in my role with the board. Particularly reviewing principles around internal and external relationships, making sure that programs do have good local ties to industry, bringing in good speakers, creating good internship programs or practicum projects or things that are, don't get me wrong, you need to have the fundamental academic educational requirements. You need to spend that time learning the fundamentals of management and ethics and the economics and marketing and at a very fundamental level, but that needs to then be, capped off in your junior and senior years with the more hands-on experience. So I'm really pushing for more of that. And that's something I definitely keep a very close eye on in the conversations that I have when we talk about these programs.
So where do you see your career going in the future? Are you going to be the CRM guru for vendors and then eventually go back into the NFL or sports teams in general?
That's a great question. I always used to joke that I had 3 goals for my career. One of them was to be a senior executive at a team, executive vice president level type position, thinking I would come up mostly through marketing, data, and strategy. Eventually, I think I would love to run my own company. Although with Core here, I'm kind of getting some of that feel for working with a smaller company and really helping to build the business. And the third is that sport management piece. I love guest lecturing and talking to students, so I definitely see it's when later on in my career, I would love the opportunity to kind of take what Bill Sutton has done, where he's had an incredibly successful career and continues to consult, but still and really helps run those great sport management programs that he's worked with. So I don't know. Everything's great here. I've been in Core for about a month, so it's really too early to tell. But it's been a great first month. This could take me in a certain direction. But I'm always also the one thing I know is I'm committed to the industry, and I don't see myself leaving sports anytime soon. And I'm hoping that all the stuff that I've done over the few years, and whether it's through the site and my jobs, that I can stay in this industry for a long time because I really enjoy it.
Well, Russell, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Great stuff, and I'd love to have you on sometime in the future.
Absolutely. This is great. It's a fun conversation, and I'm always available, so definitely stay in touch, and we'll do it again.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Sports podcast, focusing on the world of sports business. Download our free iPhone, iPad app in the iTunes App Store, and Android app available on Amazon to listen to the entire archive. Or check out sportstao.com for more podcasts, blog posts, and videos. All episodes of the Tao of Sports podcast are copyrighted and trademarked.